Right, I am here with a video I did not think I'd be making about Palworld. Did I ever, in a million years, think I would be making a video about Palworld a week ago, even? Um, I didn't even really know the name. I had seen the trailer of this game that was Pokemon with guns. There's a monkey rolling around with an assault rifle. There's giant Electabuzz looking thing with a Gatling gun. You're shooting at Pokemon with a assault rifle, like as a trainer. It just, it looked like a goofy Pokemon parody. It did not look like a game that would be the third highest played game on Steam ever by concurrent player count and sell 5 million copies in 3 to 4 days. But that's where we are. And it has caused a ton of controversy, at least in the online social media discourse that I am unfortunately a part of. But the wider public just enjoys the game and is recommending it to their friends so they can play together. And I don't even know where to start with this. So, to get the controversy stuff out of the way, the main issue people have, I would say the main one, is that this game is a ripoff of Pokemon. That's true, in many ways. It is a monster catching game, and there is some debate about whether they took exact models from Pokemon and modified them and switched them around, and there's some evidence that maybe this happened, but there's also the company saying they hired an artist to hand draw all these concepts and design them themselves, and they're influenced by Pokemon, but it's not literally Pokemon. And then there's this long history of all of these different monster games kind of copying each other's designs, or mostly copying Pokemon's designs. And then there's Pokemon itself, which took a whole bunch of things from Dragon Quest back in the day, and there's this idea of will Nintendo sue, this company's called Pocket Pair, will they sue them for, plagiarism, and I would say there's a 95% chance that's not going to happen. There have been many Pokemon-like things to happen in the past, like Temtem, there's a million of these. And here, even more so, I don't think really Nintendo has any ground to stand on. People are being this cat and this cat have the same wide smile, and it's that's the Cheshire cat. If it's true they took exact models, ripped them directly into their game and just tweaked them a little, that might be something, but I'm not sure how much super concrete evidence there is there. And it doesn't this game is a parody of Pokemon, and parodies are not illegal. And fundamentally, even though this is a monster catcher, one of the weird appeals of it is that while it has Pokemon sort of as a base, it has also taken all these other genres of game and mashed them together. I'll get into that in a minute. But the other controversy is, I read about this today, the accusations that Pocket Pair has used generative AI in some capacity for the game, and if you don't support Gen AI, you should not play it. The problem with that is that it's just sort of assuming it's used Gen AI, because the CEO a couple years ago made a bunch of tweets that were supportive of Gen AI, and watched an article on BuzzFeed make generated Pokemon out of AI. It was back in 2021, so these models barely even existed. And then the assumption is that, well, they must have made Palworld Pokemon with Gen AI, and then this company made something called AI something, I don't know, Illustrators. It's this goofy AI game where there's a little tiny Gen AI system in it, and you're supposed to guess where the images came from. It's just garbage. There is no proof that this game is made with Gen AI, and if you don't want to support it because the CEO is in favor of Gen AI, that's totally your prerogative. It's just, we have a lot of CEOs or executives these days in the video game industry expressing very, strong feelings about AI. Microsoft is straight up partnered with OpenAI and DALL-E, the image generator, and that's Xbox. Square Enix, all over this kind of stuff, already using Gen AI in some of their games. So that's your call. There is no hard evidence that's happening. That's the fact. That may change in the future, but that's where we are. So those are the controversies which most people are ignoring, and the actual game itself. So I talked about how it uses Pokemon as a base, but this game combines elements of Pokemon, a survival game like Valheim, an exploration wide world game like Breath of the Wild, even the art style, and Fortnite. It's made in Unreal 5, and it just sort of feels and plays like Fortnite as you're running around with guns and farming trees and rocks and stuff. Like that part just sort of feels like Fortnite. Uh, in theory, this should be a terrible game. Like, you can't really just take 4 or 5 of the most popular games and genres in the video game industry and mash them together and expect it to be something like good. And yet, like, I guess you can debate whether or not this is like a good game. Like, the art direction is kind of crap. Like, it's got a bunch of like AI pathing problems, but it's a fun game. It is a fun game. It is an addictive game. It is a game that is easy to recommend to anyone. You can play with your friends. You can play solo and offline. And it does all of those things right, like all of those different aspects from games right. The Fortnite resource mining and like house-ish building things, and the Valheim aspects of that with crafting and resource generation and managing a base. It's really like pretty basic stuff, but means it's like a good onboarding point for players that may not be into survival games. I am really not into survival games. I didn't even want to play Lego Fortnite, which is like the bare bones of survival games, and this has just never been a genre that appeals to me. Like, oh, hunger and thirst and hot and cold and production lines and like none of that sounds fun to me. And I've tried these games in the past and I have not enjoyed them. I enjoy Palworld. I don't. It's hard to say exactly why, but like something about the system they've set up here is a lot more appealing than these past games. On top of that, the exploration is pretty fun. It's a really big map, and you're trying to find, all these rare monsters across the map. You're finding little trinkets to like upgrade your stuff. There's little boss towers and dungeons. I would say the weakest part of the game probably is the activities to do out in the world, because the dungeons are like really copy pasted. Like, they are almost identical from all the ones I've seen. There are only 5, I think, battle towers in the game, and the first one was just a guy with one pal that was really big. It was like a boss fight, so it's a little scarce on like stuff to do in the wild besides just catch and fight Pokemon and like fight Team Rocket or whatever the equivalent of Team Rocket is here. But then we circle back around to the actual Pokemon of it. And one other point here has been people talking about how essentially this is what they've wanted Pokemon to evolve into in some ways, and this has made a lot of diehard Pokemon fans very angry. This is removing all they copied Pokemon characters or Pokemon models. This is just Pokemon has really suffered a pretty steep quality decline, like not necessarily in like the game systems, but even for Nintendo Switch, which as we know is a very underpowered console at this point. It's both old and it has to run on handheld. Game Freak is not even maximizing the potential of the Switch, even compared to other Switch games. Pokemon games look and perform like crap, and they're just getting worse over time. And here, this comes along and is built in Unreal 5, and well, it is certainly not, again, the best art direction, the best looking game of all time. It looks way better than Pokemon, and it plays smoothly. It feels really nice to play. The live action fighting of monsters is really fun, something Pokemon has dabbled with. But like, live throwing a ball at something, live having a companion out to fight other Pokemon, things like that. They're pals. I'm just always calling them Pokemon. Those are aspects that feel really fun. Turn-based stuff has its place, and that's obviously been a huge staple of Pokemon forever, but there's something fun about making it more of an action game instead, and implementing fun things like, things that exist in Pokemon, but like, they're really fun here to ride around in a giant electric Brontosaurus or a fire lion, or use a fire bird as a glider, and like all these different things where they may not be reinventing the wheel, but the way they implemented are very fun. And the way you kind of path your upgrades to, get more and more production, get better and better gear, get higher and higher level Pokemon pals, is a well-designed sort of feedback loop. And this is like it has drawn in all of these different audiences. I think this is why it's so popular, because the Pokemon audience is huge already, and many players have been dying for some sort of evolution of the series that is beyond what we've gotten on the Switch. And this, in many ways, is that. It is certainly lacking tons of features that Pokemon has for its like really explicit monster battling and catching and stuff, but it adds all these other things that kind of offset that. And survival player games can like it because it's a pretty well designed system, even if it's really basic. The map is really big. I'm still having a good time sort of venturing out and see what new monsters are there are, and different regions and stuff. That is good enough. And the combat is also good enough. It's not, a looter shooter with, 5 years of development of in a AAA budget. This game was made by like, I don't know how many people, but like barely any. And they were like barely experienced in any game design at all. I heard they didn't know what like rigging was and like all these crazy things. And they just sort of like threw this together and it worked. And like this company does have a history of like knocking off, various games, which is legal. It just is like, it's not something I would say is ultra creative, but like Craftopia was their big one, and that was like very much a Breath of the Wild ripoff. But like, that is not illegal. It's just hard to make a game that is massively successful if you're just sort of reusing old concepts, but like doing it worse, and like it's just not that engaging. And it's different here because they took all these different systems, put them together, and it works as a cohesive whole. And it is certainly not remotely the most technically advanced game on the market, and I am worried about its ability to have future updates given the size of the team, which is tiny. Like they got to fix a bazillion bugs, and like I don't know when they're gonna add more content to this. Like I don't think this game is sustainable over the long term. Not unless they crazily hire up with all this new money and figure out how to build it out. But like, this does not strike me as a team and a game that is going to be able to add significant new content with kind of any regularity. So, and like, you can see how things would kind of run dry eventually. Catch all the Pokemon, like level them up as much as you want, explore the map. There's not really, I don't think there's like end game challenges. You beat the bosses, you clear some dungeons, like then you're just sort of figuring out how much stuff you want to max out, even though you don't really have anything to do with it. And like, it does seem like a game that's going to have a pretty hard endpoint. This is like day 3 or 4 or something, and the level cap is 50. I'm level 30. It's only been a couple of days, so I don't think it has staying power. I do think it'll peak, if not this weekend, next weekend or something. But what it's done already is insane. It is the 3rd highest played concurrent game on Steam. It passed Lost Ark and Dota 2, as well as these massive single player games like Cyberpunk and Elden Ring. And like, that's great. Like, if the whole game was over now, like day before style, like this would have been a unprecedented hit. And I'm having trouble even comparing it to anything. The thing that keeps coming to mind is Pokemon Go, where I don't think I've seen a game be this explosively successful out of relative nowhere than something like this. Like, Pokemon Go was Pokemon, and but back then it was like an unproven concept. People were like, oh, like catching Pokemon in real life, is that like gonna work? And then it exploded, and it was amazing. And like, that was probably one of my favorite gaming eras, where for those 2 weeks right after launch, you'd see people running around the streets, and like, it was crazy. It was totally crazy. And like, here, that's not happening. This is just a PC game and a Game Pass game. It's also crazy that it's doing these numbers being on Xbox Game Pass and PC Game Pass. It's just something that is like sweeping the industry instantly, and like not only causing all these divisions among players and devs and artists and stuff, but like just the sheer numbers it's putting up, and the sheer amount of players. Some of that, I mean, it's also reasonably priced. It's not free to play with a bunch of microtransactions. I'm pretty sure there's no microtransactions as far as I can tell, and it was like a $26 game on Steam as opposed to all these $70 new releases. So it's just, buy this game, have fun. Like, that's really it. And I think that's most of the appeal, because it is good enough and does excel in enough ways to really appeal to a broad crowd and have them be very excited to play it and very excited to recommend it to friends. Again, I don't know what the long-term view of this is. I don't think it's going to have like some huge, long tail, crazy long-term fan base, but predicting anything about this game has been impossible. So there's really no telling at this point. I don't think Nintendo's going to sue them and shut them down. I don't think AI complaints are going to put a dent in it, even though we have no evidence it was built with Gen AI. I don't even know how are you supposed to rip off Nintendo models and then also use Gen AI to create like, aren't those mutually exclusive? Like, did they just put a bunch of Pokemon into a Gen AI system? And like, I don't really even understand what's being argued here. So we'll see how that plays out. But for now, big game, big hit, a lot of fun. I will be playing. I'm gonna play Diablo, the new season of Diablo, a bit tomorrow. I don't think I'm getting a copy of Suicide Squad, which I've said before, but so I will play that at launch in about a week. We'll see if that is more engaging than Palworld. I don't think it's a guarantee. So yeah, but I'll be playing it on and off at least for the next week. And again, I think you're gonna kind of run out of stuff to do at some point, but we'll see. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.